Good evening, everybody. And for today's reading lesson, we're going to discuss fables. So, if I tell you that a fable had come from generations before, a story that came from generations before, sometimes has been rewritten to have multiple endings, we'll have talking animals, will start with once upon a time in a faraway land, and typically have um, a moral or a lesson that the author wants you to learn. Would you be able to tell me if this was fiction, which is fake, or nonfiction, which is real? It would be fiction. Fiction is a fake accounting. However, even though it's not real fiction, it has a real message through the moral of the story. So, the particular story I'm going to read is called The Ant and the Grasshopper. And the summary of the story will be a comparison and contrast. And what I want you to think about during the reading is, what is the author, who is Amy Lowry Poole, trying to tell us? And this particular book was originally written as one of Aesop's fables and has been rewritten, and you'll notice it has a different ending than the one before. So we are calling this a fictional account, but try to listen for the moral, and then maybe afterwards we can talk about comparison and contrasting between the characters in this story. So without further ado, here we go. The Ant and the Grasshopper by Amy Lowry Poole. Beautiful illustrations. A long time ago, in the old summer palace at the edge of the emperor's courtyard, there lived a grasshopper and a family of ants. The ants awoke every day before dawn and began their endless tasks of rebuilding their house of sand, which had been washed down by the evening rains, and searching for food which they would store beneath the ground. They carried their loads of grain by grain, one by one, back and forth all day long. The grasshopper liked to sleep late into the morning, rising as the sun stretched till noon. "Silly ants," he would say, "you work too hard. Come follow me into the courtyard, where I will sing and dance for the great emperor." So at this point, can you tell me what qualities the ants have compared to what the grasshopper has? In my opinion, it feels like, yes, that the ants are hardworking and the grasshopper may like to have a little bit of fun. Let's read some more. The ants kept on working and they didn't go to the party. "Silly ants," the grasshopper would say, "see the new moon, feel the summer breeze. Let us go together and watch the empress, her ladies, as they prepare for Midsummer's Eve." Great illustrations in this book. But the ants ignored the grasshopper and kept on working. At this time, how do you think the grasshoppers feel towards the ant? And what context clues would you be able to tell me why you feel this way, such as ignoring the grasshopper's requests to go sing. Soon, the days grew shorter, and the wind brought cooler air from the north. The ants, mindful of the winter to come, worked even harder to secure their home against the impending cold and snow. They foraged for food and brought it back to their nest, saving it for those cold winter months. Now, I'd like to do a little vocabulary here. What do you think in this sentence when it says they foraged for food and brought it back to their nest? What do you think they're doing? I feel that you're probably going to assume that they are continuing their efforts, their constant work efforts, and foraged is looking for food. Another word for looking. The grasshopper replies, "Silly ants," said the grasshopper, "don't you ever rest? Today is the harvest festival. The emperor will feast on mooncakes and sweet greens from the fields. I will play my music for him until the moon disappears into the smooth lake water. Come and dance with me." Okay, at this point, I'd like to ask two questions. The grasshopper mentions the emperor, and based on the illustrations, where do you and the outfits, attire, where do you think this may be set? Do you think it's America or another country? And why? Also, when he keeps saying silly ants, how do you think the grasshopper feels about the ants? Because the grasshopper seems to be having all the fun. The ant says, "You would do well to do as we do," said one of the ants. "Winter is coming soon, and food will be hard to find. Snow will cover your house, and you will freeze without shelter." Also, I'd like to ask, based on the beginning of the story, we talk about two seasons, and one is summer, and the other is mentioned harvest and days getting colder. What season do you think this is? Back to the story. But the grasshopper ignored the ant's advice and continued to play and dance until the small hours of the morning. So obviously the ants and grasshoppers have taken two different paths. Winter arrived a week later and brought whirls of snow and ice. The emperor and his court left the summer palace for their winter home in the great forbidden city. The ants closed their door against the ice and snow, safe and warm, resting at last after their long days of preparation. In this first sentence, it says, winter arrived a week later and brought whirls of snow and ice. What do you think whirls means? Do you think it means a lot, a little? And why do you think so? Again, great pictures. And the grasshopper huddled beneath the palace eaves and rubbed his hands together in a mournful chirp, wishing he had heeded the ant's advice. And that's the end of the story. Now, this last page tells a lot. Talks about the palace eaves where the grasshopper huddles, and it talks about in a mournful chirp. What do you think that means? And think about the story. Is the grasshopper happy or sad? And why do you think so? Also, Why is he wishing he had heeded the ant's advice? And this will bring you to the moral of the story. And for, again, this is The Ant and the Grasshopper, and this has been written by Aesop, and its latest version by Amy Lowry Poole. And a lot of fables, as we talked about, can have multiple endings. What we can talk about after the moral, we can write about what we think the moral of the story is. Excuse me. We can also write, like in a journal format, would you rather be the ant or the grasshopper, and why? Which one do you think did the best? We can argue the grasshopper had a lot of fun and spent his days very happily, but he suffered in the wintertime because the ants had told him, hey, you better plan. Or would you rather be the ants who planned all summer long and worked nonstop, but missed out on all the fun? That would be how I would run my lesson. And that's it. Thank you very much. Maybe.